Hello there, this is the World News at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. My name is Solomon Ofem, and here are the top stories. Wike under fire as exam chaos sparks outrage. Nigerian military kills over 60 terrorists in gun battle. 21 bodies recovered and schools missing as flood sweeps houses in Mokwa, Niger State. Borno government to provide scholarship to children of 8 slain civil joint task force members. Court orders arrest of Wike-Led FCTA director and 10 others. Edo governor offers political amnesty to PDP's Aswe Igodalo. On the foreign scene, North Korea's Kim oversees military artillery firing contest. Details coming up in just a moment. The World News at 12 begins with former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and the National Association of Nigerian Students on Thursday condemning the conditions under which students in various parts of the country sat for the 2025 West African Senior School Certificate Examination, calling the situation a national disgrace and demanding a receipt of the affected examination paper. Viral videos on Wednesday showed candidates sitting for the 2025 WASC English language examination late at night without electricity, using lanterns and mobile phone flashlight. A worse scenario played out at Government Secondary School Nomnai in Taraba State, where candidates narrowly escaped being injured after their exam hall collapsed during a storm on Wednesday evening. The West African Examination Council attributed the delay in the conduct of the 2025 English language paper on heightened efforts to curb examination malpractice, particularly the leakage of question papers. On a Thursday statement, WIKE's acting head of public affairs, Moyoshola Adeshina, said measures taken to prevent paper leakage inadvertently impacted the timelines and seamless conduct of the examination. She cited logistical challenges, security concerns, and socio-cultural issues as contributing factors. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives Committee on Basic Education and Examination Bodies has summoned the West African Examinations Council (WAEC) to address growing concerns over the late papers and other irregularities in the ongoing 2025 West African Senior School Certificate Examination (WASC). The committee, chaired by Oboku Abonisibe of Fobi, has given WIKE a 24-hour ultimatum to appear before it on Friday, May 30, 2025. This follows WIKE's failure to appear before the committee on May 27, 2025, as previously scheduled. Ofoji expressed his frustration at WIKE's failure to attend the originally scheduled hearing, describing it as unacceptable given the significant public outcry over the irregularities. The committee has raised concerns about the growing number of complaints related to the exam's conduct. Ofoji also highlighted the irony of WIKE's response, as the reason for their absence being engaged in the ongoing exams was the very issue the committee was investigating. The committee chair warned that lawmakers will be forced to invoke the constitutional powers of the House if WIKE fails to appear by the stipulated deadline of May 30. Ofoji clarified and quoted, quote, "Our intention is not to witch hunt WIKE, but to seek answers that will calm public tension and prevent a recurrence of these challenges. WIKE has been conducting exams for decades, and we have never experienced this level of disorganization. Something is wrong and it must be addressed." End of quote. Elsewhere, no fewer than 60 terrorists causing mayhems in the northern part of Nigeria have been neutralized by the troops of Operation Adenkai of the Nigerian Army. The Army headquarters disclosed this in a statement on its Facebook page on Friday. The land and air operation, according to the post, took place in Bita, Borno State early hours of Friday. It's recorded several insurgents terrorized in the northeast have been killed by the military in the last few days. Earlier this week, dozens of Boko Haram and Islamic State West African Province ISWAP terrorists were killed by the troops in New Marte local government area of Borno State. During the encounter, unfortunately, 2 soldiers paid the supreme price. Unfortunately, no fewer than 21 bodies were reportedly recovered and numerous individuals reportedly missing following a severe midnight flood triggered by heavy rainfall that caused significant destruction in the Mokwa local government area of Niger State. Reports indicate that approximately 50 homes were inundated by the catastrophic flood that occurred late Wednesday night, which took many residents and travelers by surprise, leading to numerous fatalities and extensive property damage. VOP News understands that the two communities that suffered the most are Tufin Maza and Anguwon Hausawa, located in Mokwa town. In addition to the tragic loss of life, various vehicles including commercial transport, private automobiles and trucks became trapped in the flood waters. Drivers and passengers were observed struggling to maneuver through the inundated streets with no immediate rescue operations in sight. So far, 21 bodies had been recovered, including those of a woman and her 2 children, while many others are still unaccounted for. A woman, along with her children and several other injured individuals, was receiving medical care yesterday at Mokwa General Hospital. In another development, the governor of Borno State, Babagana Zulum, has promised to provide educational scholarships for the children of the slain Civilian Joint Task Force CJTF members. 8 members of the force were tragically killed in an improvised explosive device IED attack along the Dikwa Mate Road on Tuesday. Zulum made the announcement on Thursday during a condolence visit to families of the fallen heroes in Vezan ward of the metropolis. In a statement from his spokesman, Dauda Ilya, Zulum described them as martyrs who made ultimate sacrifices in defense of their communities, asserting that their bravery would never be forgotten. Governor Zulum played for the repose of their souls and urged their families to bear the loss with strength and fortitude. In a recent move, an Abuja High Court issued a bench warrant against the Director of Investigation and Prosecution of the FCTA, Joseph Eriki, and 10 others. Justice Suleiman Belgare has issued an order to compel the director and others to appear before the court for a suit filed against them. The judge's decision followed the application of the prosecuting counsel David Kaswe, who lamented the failure of their efforts to ensure that the suspect appear in court. Justice Suleiman Belgare of the High Court in Abuja issued a warrant of arrest against Joseph Eriki, the Director of Investigation and Prosecution of the Nyesom Wike-Led Federal Capital Territory Administration FCTA, and 10 others. He cited Section 124 of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act (ACGA), which allows for the issuance of a bench warrant to compel attendance in court. The court agreed to the application, issuing the warrant to ensure the suspect's appearance for arraignment on a 6-count charge. The charges against the suspect include criminal conspiracy, criminal trespass, forgery, and using a forged document as genuine. They are also accused of using criminal force to deter a public servant from performing their duty. The suspect allegedly entered a plot of land belonging to Ether Ventures and constructed structures without authorization to defraud the company. Edo State Governor Senator Monday Okwebolo has offered an unconditional political amnesty to the candidate of the People's Democratic Party (PDP) in the 2024 governorship election in Edo, Asue Igodalo. In a statement on Friday, the governor's chief press secretary, Fred Itua, disclosed that Okwebolo's offer of political amnesty to Igodalo, who has allegedly been sidelined by his political benefactors, is a show of true sportsmanship. Okwebolo described Asue Igodalo's discomforting situation since he was defeated during the election as troubling. He urged him to join the All Progressives Congress (APC) and contribute meaningfully to the ongoing development efforts across Edo State. You are currently listening to the World News at 12 right here on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. We will take a break. When we return, we head into the news analysis segment with our senior correspondent Esther Nwachiku. Do stay with us.
Hi, you're listening to the World News at 12 on Voice of the People 90.3 FM. This is a news analysis segment, and via the telephone today, I actually have Barrister Fred Nzako. He'll be giving us his own purview and insight into some of the stories read out on the World News at 12 by Solomon Offem. Barrister Fred Nzako, good afternoon and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to our dear listeners.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzako, let's start off with the recent criticism on the President's scorecard, 2-year scorecard. Atiku Abubakar recently made some statements about the President's administration. For Atiku, he believes that the administration of the President has deepened poverty, delivered more hardship than any government in Nigeria's history. And in response, the Special Advisor to the President on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onaniga, dismissed Atiku's criticism as baseless and politically motivated. They also said his criticism is unfair and appears to be driven more by animosity than objective analysis. So the question is the fact that they believe that the former vice president is ignoring the reforms Tinubu has implemented to stabilize the economy, which includes fuel subsidy removal, foreign exchange unification, initiatives that Atiku himself had previously supported in his campaign manifesto. So how come he's saying the opposite? So are they debunking or refuting Atiku's criticism because he is a political ally? Are Nigerians not feeling the same brunt and saying we're not feeling the effect of all of this economic stabilization you've been reading out towards as your achievement? How would you react to this, sir?
Well, you don't expect that the office of Mr. President or those in the presidency would agree with Atiku Abubakar because they felt that he's playing politics and they too want to respond on the same political turf. But what is very important and very critical is if they don't want to agree with Atiku Abubakar, would they not agree with the realities on ground? Would they not want to talk to the people who are close to them, who are bearing the brunt of all the issues, economic challenges that Nigerians are going through? Even Mr. President himself has several times, at several addresses, alluded to the fact that he is aware that people are going through very grievous challenges, very terrible times, only that Mr. President promised that the good time will soon arrive. He admitted to that fact that Nigerians are struggling in all dimensions to survive. And he promised that the good times will soon come. The only difference is that the good times have refused to come. Rather, the bad times seem to be elongated and beyond the expectations and the imagination of the people. Whether everyone wants to agree or not, whether somebody wants to play politics or not, the reality on ground is what is very critical and very important, that Nigerians are suffering. And Nigerians, when they juxtapose their times of today with their times of before 2015, Nigerians felt with all nostalgic feeling that they had good times then, even when they were crying. Now they have seen, having carried a bucket of water and a bucket of oil, they now know the one that is heavier. And they can now begin to remember the prior to 1915 as the good old days. So that is the reality of life. But what is critical and very important is that whatever policy that government is putting in place, such a policy must be such that will improve the life of the people. If it does not improve the life of the people, it does not make the people better, then the policy can at best be either fine-tuned or rejected or even abandoned completely. Because the important thing is that government is meant for the people and not the people for government. So the life of welfare of the citizens will be very, very important in every administration. So whether Mr. President agrees with Mr. Former Vice President is not the issue. The issue is what is the opinion of the Nigerian people and what are their yes.
Barrister, let's look at this audacious comment coming from Bayo Onaniga. Bayo Onaniga claims that the president's policies or the administration's policies have curbed systemic corruption. It has attracted foreign investment and improved key economic indicators such as market capitalization and government revenue. I would like you to speak on that because I know you're very good with economic analysis on the business front. He also countered Atiku's remarks on education. He said that since last year, the government introduced a student loan scheme that over 600,000 Nigerian students have benefited. That's basically what Brian Anagar is also saying. And that to actually look at things in a clearer perspective, that this government only wants to borrow about $1.2 billion. In other words, the finance minister debunking certain statements as to reckless borrowings in 2025. They rebuffed it that they are not making any borrowing. Yet the only borrowing they've done is only about $1.2 billion. So why have we not heard of the benefits of these initiatives? It would have been so good if the administration, through the spokespersons, will reel out the benefits, the students who are getting these loans, their names, their schools. I mean, it's part of the scorecard. It's not just to come out and make out all these titles. All the students that have benefited from the loan scheme, put out their name. You have a website. As you're doing what you're doing, you're seeing benefits. You put all the evidence on the website for public access. So I don't understand. That's why there's a lot of distrust in what they say, because they feel that there is nothing realistic that makes it plausible. And then you say that your policies have been able to embed or curb systemic corruption. Is that the real sense? Is that the reality?
Well, when government officials speak that way, your mind will address two things. One, either they know intentionally that what they are saying is not true, in which case they are only mounting propaganda to dress their government in very good clothing, or alternatively, that they are very, very distant from the people in terms of realizing what is actually on ground. When the government is detached from the people, they will not understand what people are going through. These are the challenges. So it's either they know and they are claiming not to know, or it's either they know and they are only claiming that they have achieved a lot when they have achieved very little or very close to nothing, or they know really what the situation is, but they are very, very far detached from the people. So they say that they really don't know what the people are feeling. Let's say, for example, if the roads are bad and people are complaining of bad roads, and when you have opportunity to travel from Abuja to any other city, you fly by air. How would you know that the roads are bad? If the government is providing food and the clothing and the water and the electricity for you free of charge, how will you know that others are struggling to provide even the basic necessities of life for themselves? If you as a government official, you are cruising Rolls Royce like this on weekend, how would you know that others don't have even money to pay for rickety buses on the street to commute themselves to work and back? So that is the reality of the situation, that government officials are very far detached from the people, because and as a result, they do not know what the people are feeling. And those of them who populate the inner corridor of Mr. President are only telling him, okay, you are doing well. When they keep telling him, okay, you are doing well, oh, the whole world is clapping for you, talking sweet air into his ears, how would Mr. President really know that times are difficult? When Fashola was the governor, he will, on his own, drive around. When he gives contract to anybody, he will drive around at all times to go and inspect the contract. Sometimes he will move to places where you don't expect him to ask some whatever questions. When Peter was the governor of Anambra State, he will go to schools. In fact, all the head boys or head girls of secondary schools, he gave them his phone number or direct and asked them, call me if there is anything going bad in your school. And they were calling him directly, and that was why nothing went bad under him. Because the principals will know that their school prefects had the direct access to the governor, not the commissioner, not the director of education, direct to the governor himself. And anytime they called him, he will pick their call and attend to their needs. And that was when Anambra started becoming number one for years in external examinations. And when he said that this is an honor test, who can now call Mr. President to tell him this is what we are going through? Who? Apart from people like Barry Anamaka that will continue to clap for him even when there is no applause, or when there is no reason to clap. How will Mr. President understand what the people are going through? So that is the reality. And if they say that the So nobody will begin to tell Nigerians, oh, we are making gains in anti-corruption. The school education loan scheme is a good and a laudable project. But the only news we now had about that was when there was discrepancies in terms of value and the amount already spent. To the extent that what the minister was saying that they have spent was different from what the managing director of NEL Fund, or do you call him DG, or whoever that is the head of.
No, it was the ICPC that came out and told us that there was a huge disparity from 100 billion naira, and out of it is only 28 point something that had been utilized. Then the following day, ICPC came and told us that, oh, they made a mistake, that it was some certain errors made in the auditing process, that's not what it is. And that's where the doubt actually came in.
Yes, but if that has been cleared, you were now asking, why won't they publish the names of the students that have benefited?
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with such publication. When Gozo Koji, when I was Minister for Finance, she used to publish the monetary allocation to federal, state, and local government in the country. She used to publish the agencies or companies or organizations that had the highest demand for foreign exchange. And she will even publish the amount allocated to all organizations in the country that need demand for foreign exchange. Now that this is the age of internet, this is the age of internet, that you can publish any amount or any volume of work, and anybody who cares to find out will go there and click the button and find out. What is the stopping government from running openly the way and manner that will bring the followers to understand what is going on in government?
Mr. Fred Nzako, that was quite an incisive one there. Like we said, transparency is the hallmark for any administration, organization, or institution to be given a form of credibility. It tells that, okay, indeed, what you said you're doing is what you're doing, not coming to tell us that this is what you're doing, and we're not seeing the evidence to prove otherwise. Again, that is how they can bridge the gap of distrust that has already been created, with the administration. One would have actually expected the administration to work on that, trust, that personality, that perception that the public has about certain persons occupying the executive branch of government. Now, let's look at a situation in Abuja. So an Abuja court has issued a bench warrant against the Director of Investigation and Prosecution of the FCTA, Joseph Eriki, and 10 others. Justice Suleiman Belgore issued an order to compel the director and others to appear before the court for a suit filed against them. And that followed an application of the prosecuting counsel, David Kaswe, who lamented the failure of the efforts to ensure that the suspects appear in court. In fact, the court wants them arrested immediately. They said that the warrant was issued following the application by the prosecuting counsel, David Kaswe, who stated that all efforts to ensure the suspects' presence in court had failed. Kaswe informed the court that the prosecution made several attempts to notify the suspects' lawyers and shorters, but to no avail. The court then agreed to the application, issuing the warrant to ensure the suspect's appearance for arraignment on a 6-count charge. What are the 6-count charges? It includes criminal conspiracy, criminal trespass, forgery, and using a forged document as genuine. They are also accused of using criminal force to deter a public servant from performing their duty. The suspect allegedly entered a plot of land belonging to Ether Ventures and constructed structures without authorization to defraud the company. Now, Barrister, the reason why this is coming to the fore is this. You know what happened to the recent sealing of some buildings and properties in the FCT under the authorization of Nyesom Wike? Now, Ireti Kinigbe actually called out Nyesom Wike and said, you don't just go and close down people's property without getting a court warrant for it. The president actually asked the FCTA minister to please give them a 14-day window so that they can pay their money. But then those buildings and properties are still under lock and key. Wike refused to adhere to this. Is it possible that this FC method to encroach into people's properties, do what they want because they think nobody is going to question them? I mean, this is what Nigerians affiliate in this case to what transpired recently with the FCTA minister. How would you respond to this?
Nigerians must know that when you are allocated land by the government, there are some clauses that go with it. And part of the clauses is that the position in FCT, the land may be susceptible to revocation of your rights of occupancy. So the government is right by insisting that people should pay their land use charge or their ground rent. In that case, you cannot fault the Ministry of the Federal Capital Territory for sealing off complexes or buildings or any place that have refused, neglected, or failed to pay their ground rent or their land use charge. But what now plays out is that in the midst of all that, the government also has a responsibility to handle it responsibly by ensuring that some officials of government do not capitalize on the provision to dispossess people of their land. Do not capitalize on the position to do things that are untoward and illegal in terms of land allocation and acquisition. And in this particular case, the people seem to have overstepped their bounds and incurred the wrath of the victims that now drag them to court. In the event of massive unbridled selling, there are possibilities that there could be human errors. But what is important is that even if you're selling somebody's environment, you create a window for you to hear the person out. Because even in most states, there is what they call an appeal tribunal on use charge. Sometimes if you feel that the charge given to you by the government is excessive, that is not the correct, the calculation was wrong, you can now appeal to the appeal tribunal on land use. So they will look at your appeal committee. So they will consider your appeal and then reverse whatever that is wrong. These are what we expect. Even the new tax law that has just been signed by the National Assembly awaiting presidential action has a proviso that if you feel that the tax expectation given to you by the tax authority is burdensome or too much, you can now appeal. And then we're all human. Then we'll look at that and then ensure that if there's any error, it is corrected. But to allow anybody to hide under such authority or such policy to begin to dispossess people of their land, that is where illegality and criminality comes in. So those officials of FCTA are trying to run away from the long arms of the law. They must be brought to court because the papers, the documents that they use, if the documents are found to be fake, they will go in for it. If they are found to have abused their position or abused their offices, they should go in for it. They will answer questions because we cannot continue to do things in the wrong way and expect a different result. We don't want to do things in the wrong way and expect a better country. But that is not the way to go.
All right. In this recent situation, for example, Wike fired back at Senator Kingibe over the ground rent criticism. He reacted. He said, for example, that you need to stop seeing issues from an angle of hate or an angle of I hate Wike. He said that she should purge herself of the hatred that she's harboring against FCT minister. So you know that based on the directive of the minister recently revoking the titles of more than 4,700 properties whose owners had allegedly defaulted on ground rent payments for several decades, which obviously commenced on Monday. Kingibe's stance says, based on the president saying give them 2 weeks, but she criticized the enforcement approach, arguing that the Land Use Act stipulates that the penalty for non-payment of ground rent should be limited to a fine or surcharge, and that she maintained that the compulsory sealing or takeover of properties without adherence to the due process outlined in Section 42 of the Land Use Act and other relevant legal provisions was unlawful. So is Wike acting out of spite? Or is he just taking his duty as serious? Possibly because some Nigerian politicians are not used to active working personnel like this at the executive branch of government. Is her take on the method through which Wike acted on this, is it objective? And as Wike was accusing her that she has hate against him, is she personalizing things or is she just being objective with the stipulated statement concerning what is in the Land Use Act that she used to clarify and defend her stance on the fact that Wike ought not to have sealed off those properties?
It is not for the minister to begin to personalize things. We are talking about the office. He was not the first minister of FCTA. He will not be the last. So for him to begin to say it is the judge was acting on on the angle of hate.
No, that Ireti Kingibe is acting on the angle of hate. Her response, she fired back at Wike.
Yes, Kingibe.
Yes, yes.
The senator, the president,
yes, FCTA, yes.
Yes, you know that there are not. No love lost between the two of them.
But she recently supported him during the allocation with the amount 1 trillion naira that Wike wanted for the FCT during the budget presentation of the FCT. We were all, a lot of persons were surprised that she supported him because of the work he is doing. So if she supported him then in the presence of a lot of persons, how come now that she's criticizing, she seems to be coming from a place of hate?
She will criticize what is wrong and then applaud what is right. It is obviously wrong for the minister or the ministry to begin to revoke land. Revocation is not what is provided for in the Constitution. The Constitution, the same or rather the Land Use Act. The Land Use Act provides that if one does not pay ground rent, you bring further surcharge. And then if possibly, after some efforts and made for the person to pay ground rent, and then there's no positive response, then of course, you can now wear the biscuit stick of revocation, which will be the last resort. And even before that, we would have served notices of demand notices. You know, it's only when these demand notices are not respected and there no action that you begin to give the surcharge and as a second level measure. And when the surcharge is not even respected, you now go to the top level measure of revocation. And even before then, you would have even served notice of revocation. And when all those things fail, then you can now revoke and seal all the properties until they come and pay. And not to pull down the properties or dispossess them of the property.
In other words, the FCT minister acted unconstitutional based on her criticism, if what you're clarifying now is what it is.
Yes, if he didn't follow due process, then he should be criticized for not following due process, because the whole process is clearly spelled out. Like I said, FCT was created in 1976. So you can imagine the number of ministers that have worked in that ministry before Wilson Wike. So it's not a new thing, he's not reinventing the wheel. He only has to lay down procedures and follow the law. If there's any part of the law that he does not like, then he can now approach National Assembly to amend the law. That is what is expected, and not to act by as we say in law, like the foot of the chancellor. Act whimsically and by the click of his fingers, he will now behave in any way, manner or form that he likes. There are set down procedures and laws that must be followed. And any time that he fails to follow that, he should be called out. Call him out to follow the law. Does not amount to it. That is what he must know.
All right, Barrister Fred Nzako, thank you so much for taking your time and giving us this insight. We sincerely do appreciate your input.
Many thanks.
Thank you very much. And now over to Solomon Othem to give us stories outside the shores of Nigeria and to wrap up.
And that was Esther Nwachukwu with Fred Nzako, a legal practitioner. Now moving on to stories outside the shores of Nigeria, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw a firing contest among military artillery units and said that maximizing the demand for training is the shortcut to building a powerful army. The Korean Central News Agency reported that Kim watched the contest held among artillery subunits of a large combined unit of the Korean People's Army KPA the previous day, accompanied by Park Jong-chon, vice chairman of the ruling party's Central Military Commission. He stressed the importance of frequently organizing firing contests under conditions resembling actual warfare to train artillerymen to accurately hit targets at any time and in any situation. The state media also reported that Kim positively assessed the qualitative changes being made in strengthening the war capability of the artillery in conformity with the developing aspects and changing trend of modern warfare. And just before we go, here again are the top stories. WAEC under fire as exam chaos sparks outrage. Nigerian military kills over 60 terrorists in gun battle. 21 bodies recovered and schools missing as flood swept houses in Mokwa, Niger State. Borno government to provide scholarship to children of 8 slain civilian joint task force members. Court orders arrest of Wike-Led FCTA director and 10 others. Edo governor offers political amnesty to PDP's Aswe Igodalo. And on the foreign scene, North Korea's Kim oversees military artillery firing contest. And that's a swap and a wrap, on the World News at 12. The news was sourced, compiled and edited by Esther Nwachukwu. My name is Solomon Ofem. To follow our social media handles at VOP93FM. Subscribe to our YouTube channel